Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Today in this class, we'll talk about summary and précis writing. I'll try to, help you understand the difference between summary and précis and what are their characteristics and how, we should go about writing them. Fundamentally speaking, summary is basically a very brief overview of an original text. And of course, in our day-to-day academic and non-academic situations, we of course go for summaries and précis. We do write summaries and précis. I mean, if I ask you that you have 2 minutes and introduce yourself, introduce whole of your life in 2 minutes, of course, due to the time constraint, you cannot talk about every tiddly-bitly thing of your life, every good and bad, happy and sad moments, but you will of course summarize the major aspects of your life in these 2 minutes. Or if I ask you, describe the happiest moment of your life, or talk about the person who you spent most part of your life with, or if I ask you that you bought a new car and you went to watch a movie to a cinema, and on your way you witnessed a traffic or a road accident, and then if I ask you narrate all these things, talk about your car, talk about the movie you watched, talk about that very accident, for example, of course me myself also will not be interested, of course, knowing in every, inch of the details. Rather, I'll be only interested in knowing about how's the car going with you, what actually happened, in that accident, and what was the theme of, that movie. And exactly the same way, of course, you will not like to, go into the deep depths, of these 2-3 incidents. You would try to, just create a bird's-eye view of the situation. And also academically, you may be required to go through chapters, for example, and then prepare their presentations and then present in, 5 to 10 minutes, let's say, presentations. Or you might be required to, visit libraries and browse different books, collection of material, and then summarize, for your, let's say for your assignments or for your exam. And professionally also, as a journalist, let's say, you might be required, to go to, libraries, or to go to your own reference sections, of your newspaper or your electronic media, TV station or radio. And over there, you might be collecting, information by wading through, encyclopedia and reference books and, let's say, pages, and then summarizing all the details for your, articles, for your features, for example. As a business person, you might be asking people to, talk about the bottom lines, for example, the bottom lines of the reports, which people spent months, writing, or, reports like sizing, for example, 300-400 page, let's say, and you giving 1 or 2 minutes only in showing your interest only for the bottom lines, and people summarizing all the details. So summaries, of course, and précis are very much part and parcel of our everyday life, whether it's academic, non-academic, professional, or what. So this is how these are very much part of our life. Another important thing, the word information which we use, it's also relative actually, and two important aspects, for example, time and distance, let's say, they are making this news importance as relative. I mean, take the example of any, local event, let's say local festival happening in Lahore, or taking place in Lahore, will be, of course, winning main page, let's say, a representation, for example, or prime time, let's say, telecast, in TV and, radio. But in other cities, for example, it may not be enjoying this much projection, for example. Over there, it would be let's say, presented in, somewhere in the corner of the newspaper, or may not be on the front or the last page, somewhere inside page, or, not in the prime time, TV, rather, 5 o'clock news, for example, or late night, news. So this is how, like, an importance thing, I mean, things which are important today, for example, may not be important tomorrow. So things which are, which get coverage today, tomorrow, like, they just simply get shrunk to only 2-3 lines, And of course, over there, some summarizing skills are needed, from the writers, so that, they could, bulk of information they could summarize in 2-3 sentences or in 2-3 paragraphs. So this is how, like, for writers, actually, it's challenging, to master this summarizing and précis writing, skills. Before I, like, go into talking about the process of summary writing or précis writing, I would like to very briefly, rather very frankly, give you a difference between summary and précis. Look here, both are the same things, actually, frankly speaking. It's the same trade I'm talking about. Difference is what? Difference is of length. Summary is what? Summary is 40 to 50% of the original text, actually. Let's say it's a 100-word, text, and I ask you, prepare it summary. Then what I'm asking you is, shorten it to, let's say, 40-50% of the original size. When I talk about the précis, I mean actually 1/3 of the actual size, like 30% of, the words, out of 100 words, 30 words for the précis, and for summary, out of 100, 40 to 50 words. So size is actually the difference. Another important thing, before I go into talking about the process of, summary and précis writing, 3 words, like, which always go side by side, when we talk about, the writing. Summary, number 2, paraphrasing, and number 3, interpretative critiques. Now, these 3, words, they are very closely linked with each other, and very small differences are actually there in these 3. So we need to understand, actually, what summary is, what paraphrase is, and what is interpretative critique. This interpretative means, interpreting, actually, texts. Now, I would like to explain the difference in these 3 with the help of one graphic representation. If I take you back onto your screen, over there is one slide for you. On this slide, I have drawn 4 circles. You can see these circles have been labeled with O, S, P, and I. O stands for original text, S stands for summary, P stands for paraphrase, and I stands for interpretation. Now, you can see that the black lines, you can say the darker circle, has been labeled as O. This is the original text. Now, this is what actually the size I have, I have shown with the help of darker, circle, and it's labeled as O. Now, inside this darker circle, there is another smaller circle, and it has been labeled as S. Now, S stands for summary. Now, if you see the size of these 2 circles, before I, like, explain you the other circles also, let's compare the O circle and the S circle. Now, O is larger in size, which is, of course, an original text, and S circle is smaller, and it's within the larger circle. Now, from here, we can learn many things. Number 1, summary should be smaller than the original text, number 1. Number 2, summaries or summary cannot include any piece of information from any other source except from the same original text. So these 2 things, we have gotten out, from this, graphic representation. Taking you again back to the same graphic representation, there are 2 more circles. One is a circle, it's lighter in color, and that's labeled as P. Now, P stands for paraphrase. Now, you can see the placement of this P circle is slightly outish from the original text. Size is somewhat the same, but slightly outish from the original text. What does it mean? It means paraphrase. From this representation, what we are actually learning, paraphrase should be, roughly speaking, of the same size. Size mean size of the original text. If there are 100 words in the original text, then ideally speaking, paraphrase should also come in the neighborhood of 100 words, let's say 90 or 110. So that should be the size of the, paraphrasing. And the placement of this circle is slightly outish, an inch out from, the original text. In other words, 90% part is under the same original text circle, and 10% part of the circle is little outer. The message from here we get is that writer, while paraphrasing, can include some piece of information from other source also. Now, the fourth circle, which has been labeled, it's a dotted circle, labeled as I. This is interpretation. This is more than 50% of this circle is placed out of the original text. Size is also like, little smaller. The message from here is that interpretation can be, let's say, smaller in size from the original text. Number two, it always includes lots of, information from other sources. This is what actually is the difference between summary, between, paraphrase and interpretation or interpretative critique. Now, if you compare, these three with each other, then summary is what? Summary is smaller in size, and it cannot include any piece of information from any other source. It simply has to, summarize the same text of the original message in less number of words. And this paraphrase, it can include extra information, and as far as interpretation is concerned, it can include large piece of, information in it. Okay, now let me give you formal definitions of summary, paraphrase, and interpretative, critique. Summary is then what we have learned now from this graphic representation. Summary is an abridgment of the actual text, and it expresses only the main idea of the original text in reported form. In summary, writer, does not give, his give the exposition of his opinions, rather very strictly follows, the main idea or the theme of the original text. And there should be three very important features of the summary. Number one, summaries are shorter than original texts. Number two, they contain the main idea of a text. And number three, they are in reported speech. And as far as paraphrase is concerned, paraphrase attempts to express the same ideas of an original text in different words. Now, when we say different words, from different words, of course, different shades of meanings will be involved. When we are, not using the same words, we are using, paraphrasers, for example, language or his words, then of course different shades of meanings will be involved. But a successful paraphrasing is the one which, very closely and successfully also, attempts to convey exactly the same piece of information, as much possible. And also, as far as the brevity is concerned, paraphrase does not give any heed to. I mean to say, we do not, attempt to think about the brevity of the paraphrase. From this, we understand that chances are that the paraphrase is either larger in size or shorter in size. I mean, if the original text was of 100 words, for example, so possibility is that your paraphrase is more than 100 words or less than 100 words. That's possible. And of course, when we are going to use extensively circumlocution, then of course, most probably your paraphrase is going to, go larger, of course, in size. And as far as interpretative critique is concerned, what is this? this is actually evaluation of the ideas expressed in the original text. Look, this is something very important. In summaries, I didn't use this word that this is an assessment and evaluation of the original text. In paraphrase also, paraphrase is what? It's simply rewording, rephrasing, re-expressing the same piece of information, in paraphraser's words. But in, interpretative critique, I'm saying that this is an evaluation of the ideas, given in the original text. Here, writer can try to include lots of other, but very, very, very relevant, pieces of information in it. When he includes relevant pieces of information from other sources, from other than the original text, it means that he is going to bring for you some more critical perspectives, very much related with or relevant, of course, to the original text. And then, of course, there will be many questions in front of you to answer. Then, of course, this, interpretative, critique always goes, larger in size. And also, when circumlocution here also is used in interpretative text, then the size of this interpretative text is definitely going to increase. To give you a comparison of the three things, I have prepared a table for you to understand. Look, the same three genre: summary, paraphrasing, and interpretative critique. And now three important things we have to ask ourselves. Number one, information outside or original text. Means writer is going to only copy information which is given in the original text, or he can include information from other sources. Second question is reported speech. Is it going to be in direct speech or in, indirect speech, which is, of course, reported one? And number three, length. Length is going to be shorter or longer. Now, these are three basic concerns we have to ask ourselves. As far as summary is concerned, on your screen I have written under information outside or original text, no. Now, no means no information outside the original text. And number two, reported speech, yes. Summaries are always in reported speech. Summaries are never in direct speech. Even if there are quotes, for example, usually we, skip quotes, we do not, summarize them. But if, something is unavoidable, then it also, has to go in reported form. And the third is, shorter than original text. As I explained you before, summaries and precis, summary is the 40 to 50% of the original size, and precis is 30% of the original size. So summaries are always shorter than the original text. And then comes paraphrasing. Information outside or original text, answer is yes. That in paraphrasing, of course, you can use information from some other sources. Number two, reported speech, no. We are not bound to use, reported speech. If reported speech is already given in the original text, then of course we are bound to give. Otherwise, like in summaries, here we are not going to use, reported speech necessarily. Number three, length is concerned. Its length can increase or decrease. Like in summary, there is only one option. Length has to go down. I mean to say, it has to go smaller in size. But in paraphrasing, it can go up or it can go down. As far as interpretative critique is concerned, let's see the same three findings. First question, information outside or original text. Yes, of course, interpretative text can use. Rather, here we use loads of information from other sources. And reported speech, no, not at all. We can use direct speech, we can use indirect speech, that doesn't matter. And as far as the length is concerned, any length possible. But most probably length is always longer than the original text. So this is all about three very important things: summary, paraphrasing, and interpretative text. One word again for each. Summary is something which is shorter in size, bird eye view only. Paraphrasing is rephrasing, rewording, re-expressing, in other words. And number three, interpretative means actually evaluation of the original text. And when we say evaluation of the original text, here we write a critique, we discuss some critical perspectives of the arguments, which writer actually has used in the original text. And also, if relevant, we find some information from other sources. What we do is actually we also bring and compare and contrast. And this is how we interpret, texts. Let me now illustrate the same discussion which I, made on, explaining you the difference between summary and paraphrase and interpretive, text. Let me illustrate the same, thing with the help of an example. On your screen, there is one text which I have named as original text, and it's from somebody who is from Taiwan, and he went to Canada, and there, he narrated his experience. So what he says, let's read it. I'm a Taiwanese man, but I have lived in Canada for several years now. I'm surprised at how Canadian society respects the rights of women, both at work and home. Personally, I believe women in Canada are better off than women in Taiwan. Now, this can be, point number one, which we'll consider for, summaries. Then what he says, however, some of my female friends in Canada miss the good old days when women were treated in a different ways. Now, this can be our second point, for the summary. Next, you see, in the past, gentlemen followed different rules of behavior. Now, what was that rule of behavior? They would open the doors for ladies, pull out chairs for ladies to sit down, stand up when a lady left the table, and offer to pay the bill at restaurants. Now, these 4 or 5 things, which he mentioned, this is sort of like, examples, which he talked about. Then he says, now, however, most Canadians believe that men and women should be considered equal. This is another point, which we can consider for our summary. For example, women now generally have to pay for their own meals. Now, how we make summaries, very simply speaking, all the same main points, we can put together, and our summary will be very much there. Let's see, the same text version 2 as a summary. Of course, you can, in just one glance, you have an idea. Now, this is smaller in size, and word limit I have mentioned there also, 78 only. And how the text goes, this text describes the experience of a Taiwanese man. Now, look how it starts actually. Please note on these smaller points as well. This text describes, this is a very typical style of a summary. This text describes the experience of a Taiwanese man who lived in Canada for several years. He considers Canadian women better off than Taiwanese. However, he notes some Canadian women feel nostalgic about the days when they received special courtesies. For example, formerly men opened doors for women or paid for their meals. At this time, most Canadians endeavor to treat men and women equally. Women today, therefore, are expected to cover the cost of their own meals. This is an excellent piece, as a summarized version of the same original text. In this, nothing we have taken out from any other source. What we have done is only underlined, the main points, and then put the main points together. We, started the summary from an opener that this text describes, and this is how, our text went. Shorter in size, of course, extremely focused. Information is the same one, and of course it's in reported form, which are of course the characteristics of a summary. Now let's see third version of the same original text and compare, the next version with the summary one. The next version is of interpretative critique. Let's see how these are written, what form they take, what language, choices we actually introduce, to interpretative critiques. On your screen now, you can see, I think that men and women should be treated equally. Now take a look of this. Previously, in summary, we were saying this text describes, and in here, so much personalized. As I told you before, interpretative texts are, or interpretative critiques are actually evaluative, you can say, explanations in which, we critically discuss the perspectives discussed in the original text. We do not, sum up the original text, or we do not, shorten the original text or briefly describe it or overview it. What we do actually, we critically evaluate the arguments, which writer uses in his original text. So in here, how it goes, I think that men and women should be treated equally. In Taiwan, this is rarely the case. So in many ways, Canadian women are luckier than Taiwanese. In the original text, it was not mentioned nowhere that, who is lucky and who is not. Though men often pay for women's meals in Taiwan, they also earn more than women, which is unfair. Most women appreciate courtesies such as having doors open for them. However, a more pressing need is gender equality, especially in the workplace. Men and women doing the same work should get the same pay. In the future, I hope Taiwanese women will have the same rights as Canadian women. Now, did you see? This is more of a comparison and contrast of the lifestyle of men and women in Canada and in Taiwan. Whereas in original text, information was, of course, somewhat the same, but here, writer tried to introduce some more, pieces of information. Of course, those pieces are relevant, but they introduce some more critical perspectives, and this is how they give us a chance to see things compared and contrasted. The next version of the same original text you would see in paraphrasing form, and of course that text you can compare with the first one as summary, the second one as interpretative critique. See how paraphrase is written. In here, I am Taiwanese and I have lived in Canada for several years. The way Canadians respect women's rights, both at work and home, is surprising. My opinion is that Canadian women are better off than Taiwanese. Some women in Canada whom I know miss the days when they were treated differently. Behavior standards differed in the past. At one time, men opened doors for women, pulled out chairs for them, and offered to pay the bills when dining out. Now, however, most Canadians believe men and women should be regarded as equals. As a result, women now must generally pay for their own meals. Now, see the difference. In summaries, we strongly restrict ourselves from including any piece of information from any other source except what is given in the original text. Size is smaller. In paraphrase, we reword, we rephrase, we restructure the same piece of information. Again, maybe very minute details we can add, but we try to restrict to the actual piece of information given. But in interpretative, critiques, you can add information the way you want. So this is all about summaries, paraphrase, and interpretative, critique. Now I would like to show you some important characteristics of summary now. Let's limit ourselves now only to the summary. The very important characteristic of a good summary is proper citations. A summary should always, take its start from writer's name of the title, for example, the source of information also. If you are summarizing, a page from newspaper or magazine, for example, then of course you will have to give, the date of publication as well, or the date of printing also. Second important characteristic of good summaries, thesis statement. Right after mentioning, this citation, writer's name, then, the source of information, the date of, printing or publishing. Right after this, should come thesis statement. What is a thesis statement? Thesis statement is actually the theme of the actual, idea under discussion. That can be, the main idea, and, it should not have any, let's say, examples in it, any illustrations, for example, any analogies mentioned. Main idea should be expressed only in one, sentence. And the thesis statement or the main idea should be mentioned, of course, at the start, of the summary. And the next important characteristic of, a good summary is sportive details. Right after thesis statement, like the first one, citation. Number two, thesis statement. Citation in one sentence, thesis statement in one sentence. Next comes, of course, how to summarize the sportive details. Look here, writer expresses different arguments, and then writers also illustrate their arguments with the help of some examples and analogies. A good summary is the one in which does not, give or describe, analogies or examples. So how to, summarize sportive details? Only main points or main arguments which writer, gives in the support of his main idea. Only those should be taken out, put together, and this is how, it should be done. The specifics, as I mentioned before, the specifics means, descriptions, details, facts and figures, which are of secondary importance. They should always be omitted from the summary. And the next one will be grammar and mechanics. Since we are going to do two things with the summaries, of course, we are going to use our words, actually. We're not going to borrow words from the original text. We'll be using our own words, number one. And number two, we'll be putting, our sentences are going to be in reported form. So, of course, grammar stuff is very much there. There should not be any grammatical, error. Sentences should be grammatically and stylistically, correct and, of course, effective and meaningful. And, of course, the rules of mechanics we have to follow. If we are going to use punctuation, for example, spellings, for example, abbreviations, if we are going to use, hyphens, for example. So all these, have to be used in their best form correctly, of course. Then comes what we are going to, edit and write our work. And, of course, length. We should be very much particular about a summary should be 40 to 50% of the actual text. Very frankly speaking, this summary writing actually, it looks easy, but it's technical. Why it's technical? Because it involves a lot many sub-skills. Like the first skill which good summaries need from you as a writer is what? That you should have a very good reading speed and you should have a very good, reading comprehension. Number two, you should know how to paraphrase. Number three, you should have loads of lexical stock. Why? Because, of course, you will be using one-word substitution, in your... there may be some circumlocution in the original text. Split words may be there, some idiomatic expressions may be there. And, of course, you are going to condense, that original text into smaller size. Then, of course, you will have to treat circumlocution. You'll have to omit, the circumlocutional entries, given in the original text. How? With the help of one-word substitution. Such words, which could describe, the whole picture, but the size of the word should be, of course, smaller. And then, syntactical awareness, different structural choices, such structures, which could encompass major ideas easily, and then, of course, mechanics and revising and editing. So these are sub-skills, which we need for summarizing, of course. There is one, one formula which we use to summarize text. That's called cure me. Now, cure me, it's actually a mnemonic, and C stands for condensed, U stands for unbiased, okay? And then RE stands for restated. So this is what actually cure is. Condensed means, of course, your summaries should be condensed. They should be smaller in size. They should only focus the main ideas. No, place for explanations and illustrations. Unbiased, of course, we are going to use in reported format. If you compare summaries with interpretative, critique, interpretative critiques may be biased, but summaries are always unbiased. We cannot use I pronoun, we have to use, the third person. And then comes, RE of the cure, which is what restated. Put the author's ideas in your own words. Do not include your own information or your own, biasness or your own, ideas in that. And, of course, what me stands for, me is main idea and E is essential points. Of course, we are going to sum up the details. What? One sentence for the main idea and, of course, one or two sentences, for the essential details. So this is what actually, the cure me is. Now, let me very quickly take you towards the process of, summary writing. In this process, of course, there are 6 steps. Step number 1 is identifying the key points of a text. Let's say there is a piece in front of you and I ask you summarize that, piece. And you will apply rule number 1 or step number 1. Step number 1 says identify the key points of a text. Hold a pencil in your hand and go through. Of course, in that text, there will be many things. If it's a listing text, for example, then writer has listed different, points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it's order of importance, for example, then he has used this language in which, he will have prioritized his arguments or his, points of interests. If it's a time order, for example, then, of course, from past to present or from present to past, he has gone. Or if it's a spatial text, then east, west, north, south is under discussion. In multi-paragraph text, of course, again, that could be, it could be a mix of all these things. So what you are going to do actually, simply hold a pen in your hand, find out where is the main idea. Of course, main idea is, you have studied in, paragraph writing, main idea is always in the first sentence. And after the first sentence, what happens actually, you have sportive details. In the sportive details, you have two things. Number one, arguments, and number two, illustrations. For summaries, main idea is important, number one, and number two, argumentation is important. Illustrations are not important. Then in the last sentence of the paragraphs, what you find, of course, you find the summing up. Summing up is, of course, either the repetition of the main idea or the summing up of the argumentation. Now, identifying the key points means underline the main idea, number one, and underline all the arguments of the writer. And you are not going to consider the illustrations. Illustrations means details, explanations, examples, analogies. This stuff, it has no place for summary. Please follow it very, very strictly. Number one, main topic you will identify. Number two, main arguments you will identify. And then, of course, you will move ahead. Step number two is paraphrasing key points at a sentence level. Now, second step, what you do, since you have identified the main points, now you're going to paraphrase. Paraphrase means, as I told you before, reword, rephrase, re-express in your own words. In summaries, we do not use the language of the original text. We write summaries in our own language. So this is called, paraphrasing. Paraphrase it, okay? Now, there are two levels of paraphrasing. One we call sentence-level paraphrasing, and second we call discourse-level paraphrasing. Well, discourse-level paraphrasing is, of course, difficult. Easy for experienced people, difficult for the novice or the newly starters. Therefore, I would advise you that, by the way, when I said discourse-level paraphrasing means that in just one go, you can rephrase the whole, text. That's, of course, difficult. So, at sentence level, I mean, how many sentences, for example, is, let's say, 100-word paragraph. So, one sentence was for main idea, and there were 4 arguments. So, 4 sentences were for the 4 arguments. So, 5, and there was one conclusion. So, 4, 5, 6 total sentences are there. And these you are going to reword, rephrase, restructure in your own language. This is how, sentence by sentence, you will be rewriting these sentences. This is what actually I call sentence-level paraphrasing. 2 more considerations, have, keep in mind. They are like, deep structure paraphrasing, and the second one is what? Word level, paraphrasing. Deep structure, actually means when what you do actually, the whole theme, I mean, 4 or 5 sentences which are in front of you, you just go through them and you understand the actual theme, and that theme you translate, in your own words. This is called, deep structure paraphrasing. This is again difficult. Experienced writers, of course, can do it, but I advise for you word level paraphrasing, which means that you see what are the key words in these sentences, have synonyms of these keywords, and this is how you can, what I'm saying is that in every sentence there is or there are 1 or 2 keywords. Find out their synonyms and restructure the sentences. This is called word-level paraphrasing. I have one example for you for word-level paraphrasing and for deep structure paraphrasing. The temperature in many parts of the world is gradually rising. Now, this sentence is talking about temperature different parts of the world, gradually rising. Now, 3 points are there. Now, word level paraphrasing will be translating these 3 words into other words. I mean, finding out the synonyms of these 3 words. Deep structure will be understand the whole theme of the sentence and translate that theme, into different language. Now, I have prepared 2 versions for you. You can see the first one is the temperature in lots of places around the earth is slowly increasing. And the second one is most parts of the world are getting hotter steadily. Now, this is, deep structure paraphrasing. You understood the mood, you understood the theme, you understood the pulse of the sentence, and you translated that. That's, of course, difficult. Easy one for you, I'm suggesting, is word-level paraphrasing. Find out the keywords, and then find out the synonyms of those keywords, and make a new sentence. So this is how you can do. First step is what? Identify the key points. Step number 2 is what? Paraphrase keyword at a sentence level. Let's see the third step. Third step is transforming sentence level paraphrases into reported speech. This is what our third point is. Now you're going to change your sentences into reported speech. For example, original text over there is, I'm a Taiwanese man, but I have lived in Canada for several years now. I am surprised at how Canadian society respects the rights of women. Now, this text we are going to change into reported speech, and that is, the author is a Taiwanese man, but has lived in Canada for several years now. He was surprised at how Canadian society respects the rights of women. This is a step in which, sentence-level paraphrases we change into reported form. The next step is, introduce linkers. I mean, signal words or transitional, words, so that, your text could hold together, like the use of first of all, secondly, thirdly, moreover, what is more, furthermore, or next, or in addition, or lastly, or finally, or in conclusion, these words, of course, paint picture for the readers and make the reader's job easy, of course. Why? Because readers, feel what's coming next. This, after introducing this, what you do, then a very important feature of summaries, that the openers of the summaries, as I told you before, in our first example in which, our summary started this way, this text describes. Now, this text describes is an opener, actually. All summaries, should start off, the same way. Like on your screen, I have enlisted some possible openers for good summaries. This is an article about. This passage reflects the opinion of. This story expresses the thoughts of. This is a book written for and about. So this is how we start always our, summaries. Next step is revising. Of course, it's very important. What you're going to do, you are actually going to redo things. You're going to, check your steps again, that all the key points I have added to my summary, have I rephrased all key points? Paraphrased all key points. Number 3, then you'll check that all the key points are in reported form. And then you will check that have I added, linkers to my text? My text, does it, hold together or not? And then you will see the openers finally, that my text starts this way, that, this article is about, or this book is about, the writer in, so-and-so article, wants to talk about blah, blah, blah. So these things, finally you check, and then you move towards rewriting your summaries. Before you rewrite, of course, you check the rules of grammar, the rules of effective sentences, the rules of mechanics, and then you prepare the final, version of your summaries. This is all about summaries. Before I, take you towards one final, example for your understanding, I would like to recapitulate some important points. Please keep in mind that summary, paraphrase, and interpretative text, they are very closely related with each other. Summary is something which is always smaller in size. When I say smaller in size, I am comparing it with the original text. Number 2, it is in the words of the writer. We do not use the words from the original text. And number 3, it should be in reported form. Whereas, this paraphrase is what? It is, simply the translation of the same original text into, different language. And interpretive text is what? This is basically a comparison and contrast of, all the arguments, which writer has, used in the support of his main idea. For summaries, important things are that, it should start with an opener, as I explained you before, and then there should be, the main idea should be, expressed in one sentence, and then 2-3 sentences for the supportive details. Make sure that you do not include specifics. As I told you before, specifics are, illustrations. Specifics are, examples. They are analogies. They are details. In summaries, we do not include. And then what comes next? We, add one, you can say, wind-up sentence. And, of course, we apply all, the rules of revising, and, of course, editing and proofreading. And this is how, our summaries are, done up finally. Now, with this, I'll now take you towards final, example. And there, once again, we'll see, in different steps, changing one original text into, its summarized, version. There is an example small paragraph. It is all about this way. Height connotes status in many parts of the world. Executive offices are usually on the top floors. The underlinings work below. Even being tall can help a person succeed. Studies have shown that employers are more willing to hire men over 6 feet tall than shorter men with the same credentials. Studies of real-world executives and graduates have shown that taller men make more money. In one study, every extra inch of height brought in an extra $1,300 a year. But being too big can be a disadvantage. A tall, brawny football player complained that people found him intimidating off the field and blamed he had the brains of a Twinkie. Now, this is our, original text, which we are going to change into, a summarized version. We are going to, summarize this one in simple words. But before we summarize it, let's find out the same steps, Step number 1 was find out the key points of this text. Now, here I have enlisted all the key points. Like, what was the topic sentence? Topic sentence is, height connotes status in many parts of the world. This is your topic sentence, or you can say key point number 1. Key point number 2 was, even being tall can help a person succeed. Number 3, executive offices are usually on the top floor. And the last one, being too big can be disadvantaged. So this is what our actual text was. Now, these same 4 key points we are going to put together, and we, of course, going to apply different, language gimmicks to, make it look like one compact piece. And then, of course, your summary will, of course, be ready. Here you go, with first version of the summary. Throughout the world, being tall will lead to professional success. In fact, research shows that employers are more likely to hire taller men and to pay them more as compared to shorter men with the same qualifications. Now, in this summary, of course, we try to encompass all the main ideas. But what happens, slightly we change the theme actually of the actual text. Like, this summary is too brief. Further, it changes the meaning slightly, giving the impression that being tall guarantees success. Whereas in the original text, we also discussed, there are some drawbacks also. Let's see the second version, and that is, though Height may connote slowness to some people in the business world. It is almost universally associated with success. For example, taller men are more likely to be hired and to have greater salaries. Further, those in top positions within a company are more likely to work on the top floors of office buildings. So this summary is the most effective, and it very strongly focuses only on the key, points. And this is what actually all about is, about the summary writing and all. I hope you understood what summaries actually are, how we write them, what are the characteristics. With this, let's call it a day. See you next time. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Next time I'll bring you a new topic. Take care of yourself. See you.